As we turn the page to the new year of 2016, India still remains the second most populated country around the globe, falling just short of China. The population crisis has been detrimental to other factors in the environment for India. In addition, we can see many Indian citizens suffering as people live in poverty on the streets. Today, we will interview Mr. Vivek Trivedi, who is an environmentalist that has lived in India for the past 5 years. Mr. Trivedi, we have seen India in the past 50 years grow and develop as a nation. But how do you feel about approximately 22% of the Indian population living below the poverty line?
Well, you say that statistic, 22% living below the poverty line, but you also have to understand the massive population of India compared to the United States, coupled with the resources that India has compared to the United States. You see, the United States has a lot more resources, has a lot more money, has a lot more federal programs that are helping these people who are homeless. We have homeless shelters. If you see something in like Philadelphia, you go to India, you don't see that sort of thing there. They don't have the same resources to offer. Luxuries such as food and shelter, they're not available to them. So I think you have to take into a lot of factors when you make that statement.
Overall, India as a nation is one of the most densely populated regions on the globe. How did seeing these impoverished people living in poor conditions affect you emotionally?
Definitely. Going there, you have an emotional response to it. Something you see definitely connecting to your heritage, me being Indian, you develop some compassion. It's definitely, you see these people who are suffering, and then you analyze what you have as a person, and you really see this disparity between the two, that, something I take for granted, food every day, is not something, it's not a luxury that's enjoyed by every single person over there. Things such as money, family, shelter, like, you see these people huddled up together in the cold at night, and on the other hand, you're sitting at home by your fireplace enjoying TV and hot chocolate. You really feel for the people in the country over there.
Because of the massive population in India, there are obviously some environmental impacts which can degrade the land. In your visits to India, describe what the land and air was like.
Well, I'll start with the land. So, there's clearly a sanitation issue in India, as you can see with massive amounts of people living on the streets. You can see that even your everyday road is littered with trash, is littered with just garbage that you would need to be put in a trash can, as you would say here. On the other hand, India developing as an industrial power, there's a lot of carbon emissions occurring in India with factories, cars, rickshaws always driving around, and I think that we need to analyze India's problem on a global perspective, definitely. That we do have this problem of carbon emissions, we do have this problem of global warming, and India is just one of the countries that's contributing to this big problem, that these carbon emissions are destroying the environment.
When considering the large amount of people in India who live under poverty, how do you think the Indian government should go about solving this issue?
That's a great question. So, I think that India should definitely look at the model adopted by the United States here. So, India is not very good at these programs that we have, such as welfare, and they're not very good at these kind of public programs like shelter, soup kitchens, things like that. I think very much around the streets of India, you're fending for yourself, and you're kind of fighting for your life. I think the Indian government needs to look at other models adopted in the world. I think they need to look at ideas such as welfare. How are we going to help the everyday homeless person get by in life? Also, I think more public programs need to be adopted. We need to find leaders who are going to implement these programs. So we need people to be making these soup kitchens, making these homeless shelters. So we can send these people to go there. And it's not just, okay, we're going to provide these people shelter. These programs need to teach them life skills. So we're not giving them shelter, and they're not just going to be staying here. They're going to eventually become self-dependent.
With many Indians struggling to have food on a daily basis, how would you compare their population physically to the people of the United States?
Well, you definitely hit it on the dot right there. So you brought up this issue of food. So obviously, if our people in India are not as well nourished as the people in America, they're going to be emaciated. We're not getting the nutrients we need. It's leading to rampant diseases. So things we take for granted in America, such as taking care of these vaccines that we need to prevent diseases, being fed every day to stay healthy. That's not something that we have in India. So clearly you can see that the physiological nature of these people is a lot less stable than I would say the people in America. We don't have the same muscle mass. We don't have the same tone. Disease is rampant in India. So I think it's definitely coupled with this idea of sanitation, this idea of poor nutrition that contributes to the physiological difference between the two countries.
I want to thank you for your time today, Mr. Trivedi, as you gave us an inside look on what goes on in such a highly populated nation such as India. It is really mind-blowing to think about some of the things which go on in a foreign country, as we are not accustomed to seeing that in the United States. Please come back next week as we are going to review and analyze the controversial one-child policy of China.